Welcome back to the freaking channel, Walking on Water. In today's episode, I'm out here in the garage, I'm getting the boat ready, we're getting ready to go down to Ferdinand Lake, we're getting ready to fish for some stalker trout. So I thought, what not a better time to talk about the best ways to catch trout and the best ways to set up your fishing rod to catch trout. If you're looking to get your kid on his first fish, if you're looking to catch your first fish, this how-to will 100% help you. We're gonna go through the rod, the reel, the line, the tackle, the setups, where to cast, where not to cast. Like, subscribe, and share. Let's get right into it. All right, guys. So you made it to the store. You're looking for a fishing pole to go out and bonk a bunch of stalker trout, right? You do not need to get online. You don't need to go find a Guide Select Pro Ultralight. You don't need to spend a lot of money to get yourself on the water and get fishing for these trout. My kids have outfished me 1,000,000 times with the Barbie rods or the Spider-Man poles. And yes, the sensitivity on the tip of the rod isn't as great as something like the Okuma or, you know, a Lama Glass little ultralight that you could spend $100 on. But the sensitivity is there, and we do recognize when a fish is hitting those rods, and we are able to catch them. So a nice standard cheap in the middle is a little Shakespeare 6-foot rod. You can go down and pick up a little $30 Sienna 500 FD, super cheap combination. Does not require a whole lot of knowledge to set it up. It simply comes in 2 parts. Put it together, okay? Then you got your fishing rod. Unscrew the top right up here. Place your reel in. Okay? Unscrew the top, you get your reel. We're gonna pretend it doesn't have line on it today. Gonna slide it in, screw it down just like so, okay? Now, trout rod and reel combo is now set up, okay? What we're looking for as far as line goes, now there's a multiple different brands out here. I just so happen to have some really cheap tri-line sitting here. You can go with a light 2 to 6 pound braid. You can go with obviously a 2 to 4 pound fluorocarbon or even a monofilament. You could even get the green line, or there's even a yellow braid out there that's really good as well. So tons of different options when it comes to line. Definitely though, you do not want to go super heavy on line. These small spools for these reels, if you do not go with a smaller line, preferably a smooth line. If you see here, this says XL smooth on the tri-line right here. If it's not a smooth line, when you go to spool it onto your reel, which if you want to learn how to spool reels and cast reels, go to my channel, Walking on Water, like, subscribe, and share. You do not have to watch the video, obviously. It just helps support me in the channel. And you can watch how to spool a reel as well as how to cast every type of reel. So back to the line, 2 to 4 pound line. There's a hole right here in the middle. You can run a pencil through it, have your kid hold it, set it on a nail. You can do the offset twist, do 50 reels with it face down and then 50 reels with it face up, so it offsets the rotation of the line as it despools from this spool, so you don't get the line twist when you're actually casting your reel into the water. It's honestly really important to do that with these smaller reels, just for the simple fact that the spool is so small. So if you have a small spool and you're worried about casting out and your line bird nesting, then you 100% need to offset the spools. All right, guys, once you've got all the line on the reel, the next step that we're going to take to get you guys into trout fishing is just to run the line up through the eyes of your fishing rod, okay? You can put this back here, set your drag loose, flip your bail. After you freshly put line on your spool, I always just like to loosen the drag a little bit versus flipping the bail. Even though we offset spooled it from the actual line spool itself, and you shouldn't have bird nests or line twists coming out of your line, I just like to loosen the drag a little bit, to pull on it, tighten it up just a little bit before I go ahead and flip the bail. It is really small diameter spool on the reel itself, and so there is always the potential or chance that, you know, it could bird nest coming off of the spool initially. So loosen the drag, pull the line up, get it all the way through the eyelets, and let's get into setting up a one of the first setups that we're gonna be talking about for the basics in the beginning to get you guys into catching some trout. All right, guys, so let's start getting into these setups. Let's get back to the basics. Let's just talk about the 3 best setups and the most basic setups to get you guys, your family, your kids on these lakes with the fishing rod that we just set up and start catching some freaking stalker trout, okay? So, trout fishing is now around the world. Everybody loves to do it. It's amazing, it's fun, and you should know how to do it too. So let's get into the first setup. So the number 1 most renowned setup would have to be a weight down to a hook. And there's a million different ways you can set this up, and there's a million different opinions on how you should set this up. But if we're talking the most basic way, all sensitivity to the tip of the rod, beyond that and everything else, let's just get into the easiest way. So if you're in the store and you're looking at weights, the most common weight you're ever going to see is a split shot. If I can hold it in my hand, a split shot weight just like this. It's got a V up top that you can pinch to open up. Use my teeth here a little bit. Just like so, it opens up and it looks just like Pac-Man, okay? What we're gonna do with this split shot weight, simply, all the way back to the basics, we're gonna slide this over the line and pinch it close, okay? Now, we have our main line with a split shot weight just like so, okay? In my opinion and in my experience, these little tiny itty bitty split shots aren't exactly what you want. Now I know the less weight you have, the more sensitivity is gonna, the tip of your rod's gonna provide, because when that fish hits, it's gonna be more of the fish and less of the weight. But to get our bait that we're gonna be using down to the bottom, I like to run at least 2 or 3 of these little itty bitty split shots, okay? So we have 2 split shots on our main line just like so. Now, we're gonna grab a hook out of our tackle box. Okay. Now, if I was to recommend a hook, a cheap hook that you're gonna find everywhere, you're not gonna find mustad hooks everywhere, you know, you might not always find Gamakatsu, but eagle claw hooks for trout are there as good as they get. They've got barbs on the back, barbs in the front. You could even debarb them, it doesn't matter. I've been using these since I was a little kid. They've been around for a long time. And so you're gonna be able to find these everywhere. Every little bait and tackle shop, every mom and pop shop, Walmart, Fred Meyer's, everywhere, okay? So it's just a good go-to for if you're just learning how to get on the water. These hooks are gonna do the job, and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise, okay? So realistically for trout, I've caught trout on a 6-inch leader and I've caught trout on a 24-inch leader. It really depends on what kind of water you're looking at. If I'm looking at a water where I can see the bottom, I'm not gonna go with a super long leader. I might go with a 12-inch leader. So that 12-inch, I mean 1 foot. So we're gonna take, a leader is 12 inches of line, and this is all a main line setup. We're not gonna tie a swivel on, we're not gonna tie a bumper on, nothing like that, okay? So let's just say we can see the bottom. I'm gonna go with about 1.5 feet, and so we're gonna grab our hook, we're gonna slide it on our line. I'll get it in a little bit closer so you guys can see. Slide it on our line just like so, okay? Then we're gonna pinch right here at the top of the eye of the hook, both lines, and we're gonna grab the line and we're gonna wrap it around itself 8 times. Just like that. I'm gonna put the tag end right here, the little tiny tag in, if you guys can see it, small line, through the eye, just like that, of the line, and then I'm gonna make a loop and just put it right back through the loop. I'm gonna pull it tight, and it's gonna suck down tight nicely and make a nice little wrap knot at the top of your hook, okay? Go ahead and pinch that off, just like so. Now, let's go over this setup really quick. I'm gonna pull some line out here. Okay. We have 2 little split shots down to a little hook, and this setup is for a bait. We are gonna use little power bait balls, little nibbles. We're gonna use power bait. You can hook a little worm on here. You can put a marshmallow on here. The little salmon eggs, absolutely any kind of bait you can imagine for trout will work on the end of this hook. So we're gonna grab our power bait. I so happen to have a little canister right here. It's gonna be pink. We're gonna pinch out a nice good size, nice little pinch, and we're gonna ball it up, okay? It does not need to be quarter size. It doesn't need to be nickel size. It can be. I have caught fish on big chunks of power bait, obviously, but I like to do roughly around the size of a penny, and then I like to roll it into a ball, squeeze it around the hook just like so, okay? Then you hand this to your kid, they cast it out. Now let's talk about where you want to cast this. So we're fishing in water that's roughly about 5 to 6 feet deep. We can see the bottom of the water. You're on a dock, and realistically, you could drop it straight down off the dock and you might have some success. But in my experience, casting 10 to 15 feet off the structure that you're on for trout will be the best place to cast this. So you see the shallow water right near the dock. You're looking out of the dock 10 to 15 feet out. You're seeing the ground a little bit still, but you see greenish water beyond that. Cast towards that greenish water. Let this sink all the way to the bottom. Let the line start wrapping itself back up a little bit on the water. As you see that line start to coil, give it a few reels, set it down on the dock, hold it in your hand till the line's tight, and watch the tip of the rod. Okay, so first setup, back to the basics. We could go into a sliding weight setup where it slides up and down the line, put a bead on it, use a bumper and stuff like that, but this is back to the basics. This will get you out on the water 100%, and this will put fish in your guys' freezer. Now, let's get into setup number 2. I'm gonna cut this line really fast. Okay, pull some line out just like so. Okay, now, number 2. You wanna get yourself down to the dock, you wanna get fishing, you're gonna need a bobber just like this. Setup number 2, trout fishing, back to the basics, is going to be the bobber setup, okay? There's a million different kinds of floats you can go out and buy. For this video purposes, I'm just gonna be using this small little standard bobber that you can absolutely find everywhere. I think you can even pick these up at the gas station. So these setups are going to be bare knuckle, the simplest setups you guys can set up to get your kids out there on the water, get them into their first fish, and put fish in your freezer. So as simple as it gets, you guys. We're gonna grab our main line just like so. Okay, we have our main line. This bobber, if you push up from the bottom and you hold it in the middle, there's a little metal piece in the middle on the bottom. If you hold that and you push up, the little metal piece extends like that. If you put your finger on top of that button on top and you push down, the little metal piece extends down just like that. And that's how we're going to apply our bobber to our line today. We're just gonna pinch down on the bottom and the top at the same time. Let the top metal piece grab the line, as well as pinch down that button on top and put your line into the bottom hook, and then release it so it grabs the line and it's nice and snug, just like so, okay? So now we have a bobber for your kid on our main line, just like so, okay? Now, just like the last setup, we're gonna grab a hook, and for this, it's a little bit different. It's actually polar opposite of fishing off the bottom, obviously, because the bobber is gonna float on top, and this hook is then gonna sink down towards the depth of the fish versus that weight sitting on the bottom and the bait rising up. So if you find a nice deep hole, I would go with the split shot weight setup versus the bobber setup. You're fishing a little shallow, I would go ahead and throw on a bobber just like this, or off a dock. A dock's always a good place to fish and get your kids on fish. Okay, so again, with the hook, we're gonna tie this to our line. Same exact knot as last time, 8 twists. We're gonna go through the eye of the line with the tag end. And then we're just gonna simply slide the tag end through the loop that created. Pull down on the line, just like so. Okay. And then go ahead and bite the tag off, cut it off, use scissors, a knife, whatever you prefer, okay? So, now, we have a 1 foot leader here to our bobber, okay? More times than not, you're gonna want a fairly long leader, because like we spoke about before, a lot of these trout will come up to feed. They will come up and bite a lure, they will come up to bite bait, that's great and grand, but most of the time they're gonna be feeding off the bottom or at least somewhere near the bottom. They're a 60° Fahrenheit fish, so they're not really gonna be on the really high surface levels of the water, especially during late spring or summer. So we're gonna slide this bobber up the line. I like to usually run about a 4 foot leader, 4 feet, 12 inches, 4 times, however you wanna slice it. And then again, we can either go ahead and throw a worm on here. If you're putting a worm on here, go ahead. More times than not, I like to go ahead and pinch my worm in half, grab the worm by the tip that did not get pinched, go ahead and slide it over the hook like so, wrap it a couple times, slide it, let the cut end dangle off. If you're gonna use power bait, again, we're gonna grab a nice little penny-sized piece out, we're gonna ball it up, we're gonna put it over the hook, we're gonna pinch it together like this. It's always good too if you dip it in the water just a little bit, pinch it together, let it form tight, pinch it around the hook, make sure it's tight around the hook, because you will be rigging power bait all day, especially when your kids are casting. They like to fling and flip, and so a lot of times this power bait just ends up going flying into the water. But if you get it a little bit wet before you apply it, it does like to stay on the hook just a little bit better. Okay, so setup number 2, back to the basics of trout fishing, bobber and hook setup and how we just set it up. 4 foot leader, shallower water. I've had this work in deeper water too. If the deeper the water, you kind of want to judge how deep the water is just by sight. Go ahead and adjust your bobber accordingly, okay? Now, number 3, and one of my favorite setups, is running a spoon or a spinner for every single kind of trout imaginable. I love the feeling of casting out into a spot, reeling in, and that fish actually coming up, engaging, and striking the lure. It makes it a lot more fun. You get to feel the hit because you're reeling in the rod or the line. Might be a little bit more complex for the younger kids to cast out and reel in all day, so maybe the power bait with the split shots or the bobber is the better option for you. Okay, so for this setup, you're just gonna need a little snap swivel like this. You don't want it to be an interlock snap swivel, you actually want it to be a real snap swivel, so it spins and rotates like this, as well as you have the interlock snap up here so you can switch out your baits as you're fishing through the day or lures. I know that I'll run a couple spoons in the morning. If they're not working, then I go ahead and switch them out so I can try something different. Just gotta get this line off real quick. Okay, so this one is super simple. You grab your snap swivel, little snap swivel, okay? And we're just gonna run it onto our main line, okay? Go ahead and do the same knot, 8 twists. Okay, 8 twists, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Go ahead and put it through the eye of the line. There's a little eye of the line. I don't know if you guys can see it here, but there's an eye. You're gonna slide that through, okay? And then that creates a loop. See the loop? They're just gonna put that line back through the loop. Just grabbing the tag end and then pulling it down, okay? Super simple knot. Also super indestructible knot. Okay, now we have our snap swivel on our line. Simply open the snap part of the swivel, hook on your spoon. Okay. Get this out here like this, get some reels on it. Then we have our spoon that is now 100% connected to our main line. I've seen people set this up 1,000 different ways. They want to run a bumper. They want to run a swivel up here with a fluorocarbon leader. If you're not running a fairly good snap swivel, you can get a little bit of line twist, but more often than not, you're really not gonna run into that. These stalker trout are overly complicated. It's not an overly complicated fishery. It's not brain surgery. And yes, there's a million different ways you can finesse and tie your setups up, but these are the 3 basics, and everything is main line. Nothing special needs to happen for you to get your kids out on the water for the first time and catch them their first fish. So if you want to change this out, just go ahead and unlock the snap just like that on the swivel. Grab your new spinner like so. Go ahead and simply snap it back in. Now, sometimes some people say that these snap swivels, once you cast them out and they hit the water, they're not engaging as fast. You can upgrade your snap swivel, that's great and grand, but I like to use for this video absolutely everything you can find at a quick bait shop, a gas station, Walmart, any big store that, you know, the everyday people that are looking for the basics in trout fishing are gonna go to pick up stuff to get their family out on the water, okay? Now, where you're gonna cast these spinners, for me, off of the dock, I just like to fan out and do a whole array of casts out into the deep blue, into the shallows. I like to find a nice structure line, and I like to cast along that. I like to cast out into the green, let it sink a little bit. You can cast out, let it sink for 10 seconds, and then you can give it a couple jerks, then you can reel it in. You can simply cast it out and reel it in. I have caught more fish on spoons and spinners than I ever have power bait, but I will tell you guys, when I was a kid, being 6 years old, I know these basics work. I was out on the lake by myself. My dad had just bought me a random kit with some power bait in it. I didn't know what I was doing, so I tied a couple weights to the line. I threw a hook on there. I threw some power bait on there, and I caught my first fish simply on the split shot and hook setup. So I know these basics work. Get your kids out there on the water, apply these methods, and you guys will 100% be successful in catching trout on the lake. Hey, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Walking on Water. In today's episode, we discussed the 3 basics of trout fishing and the 3 basic setups of trout fishing. And our first setup was simply a split shot weight down to a hook. Next being the traditional bobber and hook setup, and then into the spinner, spoon, snap swivel, everything on the main line, super basic. You guys, it's super important to get your kids out on the water, let them catch some fish. Teach them a way to sustain their families and teach their kids ways to sustain their family. Fishing is super fun for the whole entire family. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. Like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next one.